Yes, you read the thumbnail correctly. I gave up bread. Me, the ultimate bread lover, the one who has been milling my own grains. Me. And to make it even worse, I actually can say that I do agree with Wheat Belly to an extent. Hey everyone, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia and welcome to part of my new house. I have moved, so different background. But in this video, y'all may be a little shocked to hear that I gave up bread. But what do you mean? How can I keep this channel going? How do I agree with Wheat Belly of all books and Grain Brain and those type of people who state that wheat is the evil and worse, the evil all evils and worse than Satan himself? That's because I do agree with them to an extent. What I gave up was fake bread. And there is a huge difference between giving up your fake bread and your real bread. So I did a video like over a year ago. I think it was at the beginning of starting this YouTube channel where I debunked 5 Wheat Belly myths. And usually I get comments on there from people who are serious grain deniers. They want nothing to do with bread. And usually what they're saying is, well, you really need to research or you don't know your stuff or whatever, because I gave up bread and I have felt so much better and I've lost all this weight and I've had friends who've cured whatever, so on and so forth, which is wonderful that they got better. But my question that I always ask them is, okay, well, did you give up white flour, fake bread from the store, or were you already milling your wheat, consuming real whole grains, baking your own bread from freshly milled wheat? Is that what you gave up? And at that point, I usually receive crickets. No one seems to respond to that because they know that they gave up the fake stuff. So in this video, I'm actually going to tell you 4 reasons why you should also be giving up your bread, your fake bread. And at the end, I'm going to be telling you what you should be doing instead. And to make it even more fun, we're going to be using the arguments that Wheat Belly and Grain Brain use, but I'm going to correct them a bit because they definitely tend to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Reason number 1, you should be giving up bread or fake bread to correct the argument that Wheat Belly and Grain Brain use is that it's not what our ancestors ate. Well, I also know that that is not true. I'm a Bible-believing Christian, and we do know that God created wheat. God created grains for us to eat. He created us. He placed us in a garden. He gave us the seed of the earth, the fruit of the earth. He told us to tend the garden. Soon after that, we know that Cain was a tiller of the ground. He was a farmer. So from the beginning, humans have been consuming wheat and grains, and they are perfectly fine for us to eat. But what has happened is it's not the bread that's a problem. It's a flour. What God created, man corrupted. Man took the wheat, the whole wheat that God created, and back in the late 1800s and then by the 1920s, they created white flour for the masses. Now before that, white flour was generally only for rich people because only wealthy people could have the servants to sift the bran and germ out, as well as be able to afford to lose about 25% of their food to just throw out. Poor people could not do that. Poor people had the whole grain bread and thus were healthier for it. The Bible actually talks about this in Proverbs 23, where it talks about to put a knife to your throat when you sit at the king's table or a wealthy man's table, and do not be deceived by his deceitful meat and his dainties. What do you think about when you think of dainties? I definitely think of your white flour confectionery type stuff. And that's because the wealthy generally had food that wasn't healthy for them, that God did not create for it to be food. So the Bible talks about that. And then we also have the Bible talking about Jesus being the bread of life. So we know that bread is not evil, because why would Jesus compare him to something that is evil? However, just like today, and there have always been for 2,000 years since Jesus walked the earth, there have been counterfeit Christ, counterfeit Jesus, and just like we have counterfeit Christ, we have counterfeit bread, and that is the white flour, the store-bought bread that you find in the store. So again, reason number one to completely forego your fake bread and get rid of it and never touch it again is because it's simply not the food God created for your benefit and for your health. Reason number two to give up your fake bread and bread products is, Wheat Belly and Grain Brain talk about so much how the gluten sensitivities that people have, and it's because of the bread and the wheat that they're consuming, and they have these sensitivities to gluten. And I actually say that that's actually due to your fake bread, to consuming fake bread. Let's face it, y'all. Most people in the United States especially consume white flour, fake bread, your store-bought bread products, even your pasta and other things that contain wheat. They're made with white flour. And white flour, all that is gluten and starch. The fiber, all the beneficial nutrients have actually been stripped from the food. And you just have gluten and starch. And then on top of that, they usually add even more gluten to store-bought bread. If you don't believe me, just go to the bread aisle in your store, turn over the label, and you're going to see it. You're going to see where they mention the flour. It's usually enriched with some extra vitamins in it. And then you're also going to see gluten. So gluten is just added anyway. Without the fiber, without the nutrients that God created to be in wheat, if you just consume the gluten and the starch and then more gluten, that completely disrupts the gluten to starch to fiber ratio that God created and put in those wheat berries for us to consume. So yeah, if people are having issues with gluten and they're not able to consume gluten foods, or they have problems with it, well, give up your fake bread, give up your fake flour, and you'd be amazed at how much better you do feel. God created wheat berries to have the fiber and the nutrients to help you break down and digest the gluten. Gluten is not bad. It is not evil. Unless you're actually celiac, where you are just unable to digest and handle gluten, which that only affects 1% of the United States population, then most of the time I've seen people where they give up white flour, they give up fake bread because they're unable to handle that. It really upsets their stomach or whatever it is, but then they switch to freshly milled wheat and baking their own bread, and they're able to have that bread still while not having the fake stuff, but they can have the real stuff because it's real. It's the way that God made it. Reason number three you should give up your fake bread is, like Wheat Belly and Grain Brain say, is that it makes you fat. That bread makes you fat. And they're not the only ones who say this. The Atkins with the low carb diet, all that stuff. They say, oh, bread makes you fat. It's not what people say. I sell my bread and they're like, oh, I'd love to have it, but bread doesn't agree with me. Ha ha ha. As in, it makes them fat. But this is simply not true if you're eating the real stuff. Now, ultimately, what makes you fat is you consume more calories than you burn off. You just consume more than your body can handle. That's the general idea of that. And especially if you're just sitting around stuffing your face, it could be sitting around stuffing your face with just potato chips. It's not going to be good for you. The thing is with the fake bread in the store, that can make you fat because it's not filling you up and it's not feeding your cells. So a lot of times we're hungry because our cells are hungry. Our cells are looking for the nutrients that we're not getting in our food if you are surviving on just a highly processed, fake food, fake bread diet. So because your body is telling you we're hungry, you eat more. But if you're just eating the fake stuff, the processed, not real stuff, then you're going to keep eating. You're going to overeat. And a lot of times that also includes a ton of sugar. The great thing about real bread, you mill your wheat, you bake your bread at home, is that because of the fiber, there's so much fiber in there, you can only eat so much. Trust me. And it's going to keep you fuller longer. And because wheat contains pretty much all the essential nutrients needed to live, your cells are actually getting full. I find that whenever I am regularly consuming my bread, real bread that I mill at home, bake, everything like that, my cravings for sugar and all the bad stuff greatly diminish. And that's because my body is satisfied. I'm not I'm not finding myself searching for something. I don't know if especially if you've been on diets and you find yourself where you're searching for something because you're not satisfied. And that's because your cells are not satisfied. You're missing the nutrients that your body is craving. So again, real bread doesn't make you fat. The fake stuff, just like, M&Ms or any sort of processed food, because you're not actually feeding yourself on a cellular level, you tend to overeat, and that definitely will make you be fat. All right, reason number 4 to give up your fake bread is, and they say this in Wheat Belly too, is it can definitely spike your blood sugar. For those people with blood sugar issues, whether it's diabetes, hypoglycemia, whatever it is, I know your doctor has probably told you to stay away from white flour, from your fake bread from the store. Now, nowadays, they might just say go on a full-on gluten-free diet. But now I'm no doctor or anything like that, so always consult your doctor, so on and so forth. But the thing is actually real wheat berries, actual whole grain, is very low on the glycemic index, which if you have to follow that type of diet where you have to watch on the foods that spike your blood sugar, that's the glycemic index to determine how much a food is going to spike your blood sugar. Well, real whole grains are actually very low on that list. It is a safe list, and this is something you can Google. It's out there. It's very easy to find. Whereas white flour, white bread, things like that are actually very high glycemic foods that are way more likely to spike your blood sugar. So if you are actually someone who has given up bread because of diabetes or whatever your blood sugar issue problem is, I actually challenge you to experiment on yourself. Get you some real whole grains, get you real wheat berries, and actually mill that at home, bake your bread, test your blood sugar, and do that for about a week or two and just see how that works out for you, as opposed to your white flour, your fake bread from the store that is extremely high on the high glycemic index. So there you have it, y'all. 4 reasons why I gave up fake bread and white flour and fake flour about 11 years ago, and I've switched to the real stuff. Okay, first of all, it's just better. It tastes so much better to mill your own wheat and bake your bread at home. And I use this for all flour products. I mill my flour for whatever flour products I'm making. Cinnamon rolls, chocolate chip cookies, muffins, pancakes. There's so many things that you can do. So if you have found yourself in bondage of giving up bread completely, because yes, I do believe 100% that it is bondage for you to throw out a food that God gave you to eat, and the ultimate food that has been supporting and humanity for thousands of years. Grains have always been the staple for most cultures in the world for thousands of years, and you do not have to be in bondage anymore. Get you the real stuff. Give up your fake stuff. Give up your counterfeit Christianity, your counterfeit bread, your counterfeit Jesus. Give up the false stuff and run to the Lord for His truth, and run to His food that He gave you for your benefit and for your enjoyment. So as always, what I say, it is not the bread, it's the flour. So if you haven't checked out that Wheat Belly video where I debunked 5 Wheat Belly myths, I will link that down below. Hopefully this video was helpful for y'all and an encouragement. And as always, I will see you next week. Bye.